I'm a thinky person. I get that what I'm feeling in the moment is in some way valuable, even though Tony Parsons would say that's not going to do anything, because he doesn't give a recipe of any kind.
No.
Even when I asked him, can you give any advice to how to enjoy life better, all he gave was irreverent, stupid comments. He said, well, you can get a lover, then you'll need a therapist and a lawyer. That's what he said. But and I really like his answer. You'd have the baited police after you because you give people a line. You give them something to do.
Yeah.
Which is your choice, I guess.
Which is what?
Your choice.
Well, not really. I can't help it. I'm a robot.
It's your essence. It's your flavour.
Yeah. I didn't used to. But what seemed to happen over the years of speaking about it was I really love like really hardcore non-duality, or I don't know what to call it, or really like pure non-duality. But what I noticed after I think it's like been 5 or 6 years of teaching now, is that you say this type of non-duality to people, and then a lot of people wear that as a costume. And then they go back into life, they forget about non-duality. They're like, well, there's nothing here for me, which there isn't, but they're taking it the wrong way. And they go, there's nothing here for me. So then they get into this mentality of everything is okay because it's all happening or something along those thought processes. But that's really not it. That's you thinking non-duality. That's kind of like what Tony Parsons would say, as in like you've come into the room and you've left with something. And I realized that there was a lot of denial also happening with that way of teaching, which isn't a bad thing. That's just what's happening. But sometimes after quite a few years of speaking about it, if you don't start pointing out feelings, people can't see the denial. But not that it's important that person does see the denial ultimately, but it's certainly going to improve that person's life if they understand the effects of being separate, like improve their life. I don't mean it's going to get them closer to non-duality, but it's going to improve things for them if they understand their mechanics, rather than telling themselves the story it's a happening or it's all freedom. Kind of the hearing non-duality in a way you could say is grace, even though everything is grace. It's kind of, it happens when it happens. Often what tends to happen when people are waking up is they understand the mechanisms of the person, so the person in a way becomes more balanced, or it understands itself better, so it's not acting out so many neurotic patterns. And there's also a hearing of non-duality, but sometimes there's just a hearing of non-duality and there's a waking up, and sometimes there's not even hearing of non-duality and there's a waking up. Sometimes it's all about facing your fears, and people face their fears without even knowing it, like they face, and then there's a change that happens, or there's a collapse of seeking that happens for some event in life, and it's got nothing to do with having worked yourself out. But for a lot of people, there seems to be a listening to non-duality while simultaneously looking at their dynamics and because the person's personal dynamics get screwed up because they believe they're somebody separate. And then after years and years of that, they get really bizarre dynamics going on. To them, they think it's normal because the rest of society's behaving like that. But it's like there's so many ways in which people behave that they never even question, or the way that they think or see things that they never even question, because they just think that's the norm, when it's totally not the norm. Just the idea of producing is such a bizarre idea, like the idea of always having to do something. And most people feel that they always have to do something. But yeah, I interrupted you.
It seems that without some good quality awareness in the mind-body mechanism, there isn't any hope, though, because that's just complete lostness.
Yeah.
If you're intoxicated, or either through substance or through just living in the world.
Yeah.
It seems like you have to have some clarity of perception somehow.
Yeah. that does seem to go along with waking up, like the robot
Yeah.
or the machine that's looking at the universe isn't getting so caught up in its illusions. It stops getting so caught up in its illusions and its own belief systems. And the best way I've found of pointing that out is to get people to feel their feelings. The problem with getting people to feel their feelings is that you imply that they're a separate doer, which they're totally not. But by people feeling their feelings, they can feel their bullshit. Because, like, to say if you're telling a story about something and you feel your feelings, you can suddenly feel that, oh, I'm just telling this because I'm afraid now, and this isn't actually the truth of the situation. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, not for necessarily waking up, but just a beautiful thing for a human to have that awareness about itself. Like to have it so, because otherwise people are just totally lost in their dream and their fears and their paranoias, and they're just 100% acting them out.
Yeah.
When I used to go and see Tony or listen to more extreme non-duality, I always used to get a sense that a lot of people that were there, or some of the people that are there, had already balanced their person to an extent. So therefore they could hear this message and it not depress them or then not take it personally. They could hear it for the beauty of the way he spoke, like the energetic resonance that he has. But then I also realized that there were a lot of people there that were using it to totally deny their experience as well. And they'd got so fed up with looking at their dynamics, or fed up with spirituality, that they suddenly loved this rebellious attitude. And I'm not against that, but that tends to be where people get stuck with the more extreme non-duality. But when people are listening to Tony, when they understand their behavior and they understand all that, and they're listening to Tony just for the joy, or to listening to that sort of non-duality just for the joy, that's really beautiful, because there's such joy in the way that Tony speaks. And the stuff that he says. If you take it personally and as a story, though, I don't think that's a good combination. If you take it on as your way of looking at life as a separate person, I don't think that's a very good combination.
Yeah.
It can encourage depression and absolute denial of experience. But that's nothing to do with Tony, that's to do with the person doing exactly what Tony says. He doesn't say don't leave the room with this, but he's like, if you leave the room with these concepts, then it's just you leaving the room with more concepts and totally missing the point.
And I have friends who will, when their partner is upset, or there's some conflict in any part of their life, really, they'll use it as a way of rationalizing, oh, there's no one there anyway, sort of thing. Like my partner doesn't actually exist, and so and I couldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of true, but it doesn't seem to me like you're engaging with life that way.
No, not at all. It's just a way of cutting off, and it suits a mentality that just for a period just wants to cut off from those feelings. They've tried lots of things and they've just got to the point where they're just tired and they want this, and they're attracted to this rebelliousness of it. But yeah, that's totally, in a human world, saying to someone that there is no problem because there's only this moment. This is not, if you're saying that in the human reality, you're misunderstanding what's being talked about, because in the human reality and relationships, it appears as if we're doers, and that's how our language is set up. So we have to communicate on that level. And it does, but hopefully this subject makes you question, though, the doership and the blame that we have for others, because it's nobody's fault, really, deep down. And we often get lost in those blaming arguments. But certainly, to argue, to when you're having an argument with your lover and use non-duality, this is totally got nothing to do with non-duality. It's just about winning the argument.
Yeah.
Non-duality doesn't need to be used in an argument.
No, I think I almost think to speak about it sort of is just going to confuse you and mess you up. To use it in any way in conversation other than addressing the subject itself, it just seems, come on, you're hurt, or you're this, or just be what the human is having.
Yeah, totally.
And it pushed me into Gestalt therapy, the whole kind of whole Tony Parsons experience. And it also pushed me towards, well, in America, people are much more assertive. And so if they want something, they'll let you know a lot of the time. It's complicated. New York is different and what have you. But I involve myself in much more conflicts now in the workplace, because I used to just think I was spiritual and everything was going to be blissful, and desire wasn't really important. And I came from a sort of TM background, which is kind of very bland in a way. Transcendental meditation. It kind of dissipates sensation in the body as much as possible, so that you're not fazed by everything, but you also don't have a very strong connection with that many things in the world, which is kind of, it sounds spiritual and good, but I found it more truthful to notice if you really want something and it's it's possibility you can have it, to make it known or do something about it, or tell somebody that they're wrong. And these things.
I really agree that the human has to be the human, and the human is never going to escape the dynamic of the movement towards pleasure and the movement towards pain. No matter how enlightened it is, it would be dead if it stopped that dynamic. It wouldn't be alive. This body's always going to have that movement towards that which it finds pleasurable, and each body will have its particular things that it finds pleasurable or it wants. And I used to find the same with Buddhism as well. It was about cutting off from wants and desires. And I don't think it's about cutting off from the wants or the desires or being human or having emotions. I think it's that one that attaches itself to them, because ultimately they're not going to bring you happiness or contentment. Contentment is what's happening, but that doesn't mean you don't do them. The body has the movement towards them, but they're never going to give you that what you're looking for. That true essence is always present. I mean, basically, it's the same but different, this pleasure or that pleasure, but that doesn't mean that you don't be fully human and fully express that. And with Tony, what I like about Tony, is that Tony, what I like about him is he does speak about being fully human. He does have this thing about fully, in one way there is no person, but in another way he has this whole thing about, if you ask him what goes, he's like, nothing goes. Anger arises, or annoyance arises, or like there's not an attempt to be spiritual there. There's not an attempt to be the spiritual person, like what he said about the lawyer and if you want to improve your life, get a lawyer, get a lover, but then
a lawyer, a lover, a therapist, and then a lawyer. He said it like spontaneously. It wasn't like his thing, you know.
But that's so funny. You see, that's what I really like about Tony, is that he, in one way, his expression is very human. Like he makes fun about humans and the way we are.
It's curious that in his meetings he doesn't steer things towards discomfort, though. I've been to some sessions of people in New York, and they're all about addressing the things which are really uncomfortable. So like if you ask somebody how they are and they say something vague, let's say that person is feeling acutely jealous and isolated at that moment. It's more interesting for them to talk about that than the fact that it was difficult to get there or something like that. And so they'll steer things towards the most uncomfortable thing in each person. It can be quite sort of traumatic and, for an English person, excruciating. But I sort of expect Tony to do that more, because it's, in a way, there's not that much sensation in the room. There's not, people's realities are not encouraged to come out. You know what I mean? People's feelings. It's quite English and sort of polite. The whole thing.
Yeah, it is polite. But I think that all speakers do different things, and what I think is really beautiful about Tony is when he speaks, there's just such a joy there. And I think that a lot of people, when they go to Tony's meetings, what they're doing is they're resonating with that energy, which has its place. I think that's really got a really beautiful part to it.
Yours is quite similar, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's not similar as well, but
there's this childlike innocence that you resonate with Tony, like the way that he just comes out with those sentences so spontaneously. And I think that the audience is resonating to an extent with that, and that's what people are getting from it. And it would be totally different if he then went into people's discomforts or did anything. But he does sometimes, by the way that he He can be so harsh sometimes, like with people. Not so often.
I have a different angle question, if I may.
Yeah.
So when people watch, I'm sure you've seen a movie like Gattaca or Blade Runner or Ex Machina, these
Yeah.
kind of android, and there's a strange empathy for a robot that is starting to realize that it's a robot or is dying or is programmed to die, like in Blade Runner. Is that how you see other people now? There's no one in there, so it really is just a biological robot. And when you see someone getting that they're just a robot and there isn't any decision making going on, it's just machine learning.
I only see them like that. Yeah, no, I only see them like that if I think about it. Actually, most of the time, the way I think about them is by not thinking about them. It's like that. It's just a total intimacy with the sensation of it, and then the thinking comes and goes. The thinking comes in like on top of that. But I don't think I would think about it very often. That even when I'm talking with someone, I wouldn't think, oh, I just wouldn't think about non-duality.
But the only person there's ever been in the world, in your experience as Lisa, or as a conscious entity, whatever that is Lisa. All there is bodies and Lisa.
From my experience.
Yeah, there was a time when you imagined there were other personalities, but now you can see there never were any.
Yeah, but in the moment, so in my everyday living, I don't think about that at all. So I have an experience that's even more intimate than that idea, in the sense that it's totally sensation. So therefore, I don't even know that I'm Lisa looking at the person and that they're a body. In a way, they're no different from a shelf or the machine. If they're type,
Yeah.
I was just thinking about going to the supermarket. Like and thoughts are appearing, but even those thoughts can't really. They might think about things, but normally when they're shopping, they're just thinking about shopping. But the experience is not non-duality in thought form, but in the experience, and that is a total involvement in what's happening. And in that, I can't feel Lisa at all, but everywhere. If you were to say it, I can't feel Lisa. I don't feel like Lisa. I feel like whatever is appearing in the most intimate form. And non-duality rarely comes up in my thoughts. Only when I'm not even when I'm talking with you guys, but I rarely think about non-duality. If it's thinking, the thinkings are about which orange should I pick, even if that requires thinking, most probably doesn't. Or what aisle is grapefruit juice in.
Yeah, it's just bits of helpful processing kind of going on.
So it's more the times that I think about it is most probably when I'm speaking with people and you ask me questions about those robots.
Okay. Sorry to bring you into the gutter.
Well, actually, I mean, you could say, like, sometimes I feel like I'm the biggest idiot there is alive, because it feels like you're drunk or you're stoned, you can't even remember who you are, and then somebody calls you or says something about you, and you're like, oh, hello, I am human. It doesn't even feel like I'm not human, it's just engrossed in everything that's happening.
Okay.
So it just doesn't have a person that feels like it's in relationship with it.
I felt quite jealous when I first came across you, but now talking to you, it changes. The jealousy disappears. It's like I worked hard. I did all these practices. I'm just still a person.
But most of the time, I bet you're not throughout the day, actually.
Right.
I bet that you're totally engrossed in whatever you're doing and you can't even remember who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I still, I guess it feels like experiences coming from inside my body, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely suffering. So in a way, the only difference between you and me is you say you're not suffering and I say I am. That's what it seems like sometimes.
Yeah. I still experience pain. And,
I know that.
still,
Like, I get the distinction.
yeah, and I still experience like difficult relationships or difficult circumstances or arguments or all those sorts of things. But it just can't really pull itself out from what's actually happening, and that is the suffering. It can't remove itself from what's actually happening. That's the suffering part, if we call it suffering such a dramatic name, that it could happen to someone.
Yeah.
That simply is. But, well, the jealousy's there. Jealousy is a very beautiful feeling if the jealousy arises. I still get jealousy. I like the sensation of jealousy.
I wonder if your jealousy is bitter.
It's all types of different things. I've experienced jealousy that's made me very sexual.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm trying to think, like, it can be jealousy if somebody's eating a really good piece of cake, and then it's wanting the cake. But it doesn't normally come in the form of I want to hurt people anymore. Like, you know how when you feel jealous, you then have the sensation of that you want to hurt that which you're jealous of. It's the human dynamic often.
Yeah, I guess for me it's more that I work hard to get what they have. So if someone's a good pianist or they've got a skill, and the more difficult skills to emulate are things like improvised comedy, where it's all to do with being in the moment, really. So you're back to the square one. It's like, okay, you want to be funny like this person.
Yeah.
First of all, if you try to do it, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You have to let go and see what arises.
Yeah.
All the things that seem to be really valuable, you actually can't get to by working hard in the same sense as you can by like training to do a marathon or something.
Yeah.
So it seems like your face changed then. You went a bit serious or a bit sort of bored or quiet or something.
I was thinking about what you were saying, and the brain couldn't find a relationship with that, and so then it was like
disengaged a bit. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you for speaking with me.
Oh, it's really nice speaking with you, Bruce.
I guess I'll see you next time. It feels like this is the end of the arc.
Okay. See you next time. Thanks, Bruce.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye-bye.